give you a little bit of background on Can you hear us okay? Much better? Okay. A little bit of background on EPAM. We are an AI and digital transformation company specializing in custom software innovation and product development. We like to say that we tend to fly under the radar. Not a lot of people have heard of EPAM. We've been around since 1993. We were founded in 93. We are publicly traded on the S&P 500 index. Our global headquarters is in the Philadelphia area. And we've got over 60,000 employees in 55 plus countries around the world. Our healthcare and life science vertical is by far our fastest growing vertical of our verticals. We take great pride in the fact that our clients often give us their most complex and challenging projects to work on. So in the case of this, where we've collaborated with Xsolis on their platform, failure is not an option in the projects we work with. So in Zach's case, I think it's good that we didn't fail on this project.
Absolutely. And again, I'm Zach Evans. I work with a company called Xsolis. And so we are a healthcare artificial intelligence company. We were founded in 2013. We're based out of Nashville, Tennessee. And we really were started with the idea that the relationships between payers and providers doesn't have to be adversarial, that there's a better way to approach the marketplace, and that by leveraging data, we can bring forth insights that really allow payers and providers to collaborate on a much more efficient and effective basis. So we believe in human-centered AI and data transparency. We also believe in data symmetry. We believe that payers and providers should have access to the same data and the same insights to make better decisions, which really, at the end of the day, drives better patient care. And so we like to say that we were an AI company before AI was really cool. So we, within our data set, we have data on over 300 million clinical encounters. We've produced over 6 billion AI-driven insights and predictions to date. And we've saved our clients in excess of $1.5 billion by arriving to better decisions in that relationship between payers and providers much more quickly and much more efficiently. And so, as Tim said, we've been on a multi-year journey with EPAM. We started several years ago with this idea that we needed to rebuild our platform. So we had an existing platform that was servicing our clients. It worked. It just wasn't very scalable. And so as we wanted to kind of launch even deeper into the marketplace, we wanted to be able to build solutions faster to bring increasing value to our clients. And so in late 2023, we launched Dragonfly, which is the name of our platform. And we started the migration process for all of our clients. And so we actually finished the migration of all of our clients earlier this year in partnership with EPAM. All of our existing clients and all of our new clients are live on the new platform. And so really that journey has been a multi-year journey to really improve those relationships, but also build a scalable platform that allows us to launch into newer and even more exciting things. And so earlier this year, we launched our first generative AI solution for initial review, which we'll talk about here in just a couple minutes. And we're excited to continue to launch new products into the marketplace on top of that really rich clinical data set that allows us to bring a lot of insights to the market. So we wanted to share a couple use cases, a couple very real use cases. Some of you may be familiar with some of these provider names that we're working with. This particular example is with a health system based in the Pacific Northwest called Beacon Healthcare. They've been a longtime customer of Xsolis. They were actually one of our design partners on our generative AI initial review solution. So if you're familiar with the concept of utilization review and how it exists within hospitals, every patient that gets admitted into a bed in a hospital, either in an inpatient or in an outpatient setting, has to have an initial review generated on them. It has to be written and typically submitted to the insurance company for review and approval. That's a very time-intensive process. It's a process that has to be done by clinical resources that are increasingly scarce and in very high demand. And so we launched this new module to be able to help automate that first pass of the generation of that initial review. So we are hopefully hosted inside of Amazon Web Services. So we built this on top of AWS Bedrock in partnership with EPAM, and we've really had some really remarkable results already in early stages of this initial review. You'll see tremendous time savings that our clients are realizing by automating that initial review generation. It allows those utilization review nurses to be able to both, in a lot of respects, just complete all the work that they need to do in a given day, but also gives them additional capacity to really work on other functions that are much more complex and time sensitive. We've also seen a decrease in the number of denials that are happening as a result of that better, higher quality initial review. As you can imagine, in any manual process, you have a tremendous amount of variability that happens from user to user. But by generating that first review through a generative AI solution, you create a draft that is much more standardized and much more robust based on the clinical picture that's being presented of that patient. And so we've seen an actual reduction in the number of denials and the number of requests for peer-to-peer reviews. Now, you may be thinking that reduction in denials is actually a negative for the payer. Well, we don't actually believe that. Really what we're helping the payers and providers do is they're arriving at the decision they were already going to arrive at in a much more time efficient and effective manner. And so by getting to that decision faster, based on that initial review, everybody saves money within that relationship, which is better for everybody involved. And that's because of the improved coordination and communication, because we are able to provide the payers with a much more robust and comprehensive clinical picture of what's going on with that patient. We're able to drive better outcomes through the use of that AI module. And so we're in the process of rolling this out across all of our clients that are wanting this solution. We're already seeing really great early reviews, even beyond the case study with Beacon Healthcare, and we're excited to see where we can go from here. The next area that we really turned our attention to, and we're a little bit earlier stage in this testing, but is in the generation of an automated appeals letter. So in that instance where, in our case, typically it's what's considered a concurrent denial happens. So concurrent denial is where the patient is still in the hospital, but the insurance company already generates a denial on that claim while the patient is still in the bed. We're able to now generate the first draft of an appeals letter to be able to submit to the payer. Again, when you think about the standardization of that appeals letter, being able to reduce that variation from appeals nurse to appeals nurse and really ensure that we are encapsulating the most comprehensive, the most accurate, and the most important clinical data, it just really creates a much more robust appeals letter to begin that adjudication process. And so in this case, we've partnered with another client of ours. In this case, also happens to be in the Pacific Northwest, a provider system called Multicare Health. Again, a longstanding client of ours, actually one of our first clients that went live on the new Dragonfly platform, and they're our design partner for the appeals letter. And so they're providing a tremendous amount of feedback to us, and they're already seeing a tremendous amount of time savings. So in their early analysis, it's saving as much as 45 minutes of generation time for that appeals letter. As you can imagine, that appeals nurse, which again is a highly sought after role that has a really constricted supply of talent to be able to fill that role, they have to comb through a tremendous amount of clinical data to start that appeals letter process. So by automating the first draft of that, still keeping the human in the loop, we're able to save a tremendous amount of time and allow those appeals nurses to become that much more efficient. We're also really streamlining that documentation. So again, rather than appeals nurse A versus appeals nurse B, including different clinical documentation than the other one would have included in that data set, we're now able to grab the most pertinent, most important data include that in the appeals letter, and generate that clinical packet for submission. And so that really improves satisfaction both on the provider side, but also on the payer side, because oftentimes these denials end up being issued just because of an absence of some piece of the clinical data. So by ensuring that we are able to include the most important and most pertinent clinical data, it's a much better clinical picture for the payer to make decisions off of, and we're seeing already early results of a higher overturn rate and a faster overturn rate, just simply because we're providing much more quality data.
One of the points I was going to stress that Zach just made is the key is also the humans in the loop. The letter is not writing itself, sending itself. It's saving an enormous amount of time, but you still need that clinical person that understands what's going on to review it before it goes out and to make some minor changes.
That's absolutely right. So what we're trying to do is to automate the portion that isn't as complex from a clinical decision-making process, and then still leverage those highly experienced nurses and other clinicians to really be able to make the important decisions that only they're able to make. And so we're a big believer in human in the loop in everything that we do, because it really allows, at the end of the day, it allows those clinicians to operate, lots of people talk about, right, operate at the top of their license or operating within the full scope of what they're able to do. And we absolutely subscribe to that and believe in that. So then the third category that we wanted to talk about is a new product that we launched earlier this year called Dragonfly Navigate. It is also an AI-powered solution. Our design partner for this is West Tennessee Healthcare. It's a health system that's based in the western part of Tennessee, over towards Jackson and Memphis, if you're familiar with Tennessee geography. And so they're really providing early feedback on our Navigate platform. Now, what Navigate does is it kind of moves us further into the case management realm of the hospital. So historically, we've kind of operated in the utilization review or utilization management space, but now we're moving even deeper into the clinical decision-making process, including the discharge planning process. So one of the things that Dragonfly Navigate brings to the market is a series of proprietary AI-driven predictions that really help with length of stay management. Okay, so we want to, through our Dragonfly Navigate solution, be able to identify really within the first handful of hours of a patient being present in a hospital, what is the likelihood of them being able to discharge within a certain amount of time of already presenting within the hospital. So if you've spent much time in hospital operations, you understand that the discharge process really starts the moment the patient is placed in the bed. There's all sorts of clinical reasons, patient safety reasons, financial impacts to try to discharge that patient from the hospital as soon as it is clinically safe and appropriate to discharge them. But hospitals historically have operated with a blind spot. They don't really know when the patient is going to be discharged. They don't really know how to begin to plan for that. And so they end up creating what's called an avoidable day. That's a day where the patient remains in a hospital bed that they don't need to be in the bed because they could have gone home, but the hospital wasn't prepared to send them home, or there was some other barrier to that discharge. So by creating these analytics that really predict the likelihood of that patient discharging within a certain time frame, nearly at the beginning of the patient's stay, we better equip and enable the hospital to make plans to discharge that patient that much faster.
The other point here is, especially during COVID, when hospitals had massive surges, I remember talking to one of our clients and they said, I just got off an internal meeting call and we had a surge call. We are at way over capacity. We have patients in the hallways, in beds. And so this is critical in terms of their ability to plan the load and to be able to understand when patients are going to get out so that they can free up those beds.
It's absolutely right. And as part of that, we are actually right now, this isn't necessarily on the slide, but we're actually right now piloting early with a couple early adopters, some new predictions that are really focused on the patient that's in the emergency department. So what is the likelihood of that patient needing to be admitted upstairs, if you will, into a bed, and also kind of running along with that parallel, what's the likelihood of that patient once they're admitted? What's the likelihood of them crossing that second midnight, which is really important for Medicare purposes. And so those are being piloted right now because just like, in the inpatient setting, bed flow and length of stay management is hugely important. It's also critical coming out of the ED as well, and really being able to predict as early in that emergency room visit the likelihood of that patient needing to be moved upstairs into a bed. So where we are thinking about going next, right? So everything that we just talked about is either in general availability or is in late stage alpha and beta testing, and it will be moving into a general availability status either later this year or first of next year, is really beginning to move into the concept of agentic AI. And so again, we're partnering with EPAM to bring some of these solutions to the market. So all of these, whether it's a care transition or whether it's the creation of that initial review or even the generation of an appeals letter, is just really diving even deeper into automation to really, again, try to maximize what those very scarce resources within the hospital are able to accomplish in any given day. And so that's really key about where we're moving next. So the ability to auto-generate clinical packets for submission to payers, and for the agent to be able to intelligently know which clinical information is really important to include in that packet, and more importantly, which clinical information is important to exclude from the packet. Oftentimes, payers will decline a claim simply because an overzealous nurse faxed 400 pages of documentation to a payer and expected the payer to be able to plow through that, and that's just not reality. So our ability to automate the creation of that clinical packet, include it with that initial review, have it be really highly targeted to the clinical disposition of that patient, just really streamlines the entire process. Similarly to that is our ability to automate some of the physician advisor services and workflows, again, to be able to further leverage some really scarce resources that are in high demand and that really have a lot of demands put on their time. So that's where we think we're headed next, and we're really excited to continue to partner with EPAM to bring those solutions to reality. Now, it's always fun when you get to talk about how the market is kind of reacting to and receiving these solutions. And so, we want to continue to deliver on customer needs, staying really focused in this space. Being able to leverage the vast amount of clinical data that we have to make smarter decisions, but also to be able to be recognized in the space for the value that we bring. So whether that's recognition for our best of breed physician advisor services through KLAS, whether it's through some of the other awards that that the Dragonfly platform has received, we're really excited just to continue to be able to develop innovative solutions along with our partners. To be able to really help solve this huge administrative problem that exists within healthcare.